Have you ever heard of a book that was so ahead of its time, its author had to sell the first 100,000 copies from the trunk of his car? Well, that book, The Celestine Prophecy, went on to become an absolute global phenomenon. It kicked off huge conversations about spirituality, personal energy, and, the real meaning of coincidence. So the book itself is basically set up like an adventure thriller. It's about this guy who's feeling kind of restless and lost in his life, and he just impulsively takes off to Peru. And his mission? To track down this mysterious, ancient manuscript that's rumored to hold 9 key insights. Insights that could literally change the future of humanity. And you gotta understand, this was never meant to be just a simple story. The author, James Redfield, he called it a parable. It was all driven by this one huge belief that all of humanity was right on the edge of a massive spiritual awakening. So, in this explainer, we're going to walk through the whole thing. We'll look at the prophecy's core ideas, we'll track its incredible journey from a self-published book to a massive bestseller, get into the fierce debate it started, and even explore a really surprising scientific echo of its themes. And finally, we'll look at what its legacy is today. Okay, so first up, what exactly is this manuscript? The whole story kicks off with a mystery that pulls our main character halfway across the world. So he learns about these ancient scrolls that supposedly predict this profound transformation for all of us. But here's the catch. There are powerful people in the government, in the church, who are desperate to suppress the manuscript. This forces him to go on the run, trying to piece together all of its secrets, one insight at a time. And as our hero starts piecing the manuscript together, he uncovers this whole new spiritual framework. So let's dig into the core ideas that create this new way of seeing the world. The very first insight is all about this idea of synchronicity. You know those strange, meaningful coincidences that happen in your life? The book suggests we really need to pay attention to them. It argues they aren't just random chance. They're like little signposts, guiding us along our true path, but only if we're awake enough to actually notice them. Now, the insights all build on each other. And the fourth one offers this really unique explanation for why people fight. It basically says that when we feel disconnected from a bigger universal source of energy, we unconsciously try to steal it from each other just to feel powerful and secure. And this energy theft shows up in what the book calls control dramas. There are 4 main types, and you've probably met all of them. There's the intimidator, who uses aggression, the interrogator, who uses criticism and questions to make you feel small, the aloof, who acts distant to make you chase them, and the poor me, who uses guilt to get what they want. A huge step in the book's path is just recognizing these patterns, both in others and, in ourselves. And this is where the book's own story starts to feel a little synchronous. This fictional manuscript about a spiritual awakening turns into a real-world cultural force. I mean, the journey of the book itself is just an incredible story. After getting rejected by publishers, Redfield just self-published it and started this grassroots movement. He was selling copies directly to small bookstores and readers, and the word of mouth was so powerful that eventually a major publisher took notice. That led to international fame and, even a movie. Just stop and think about that initial push. 100,000 copies, sold by one person, pretty much by hand. It's just a wild testament to how deeply the book's message resonated with people who were searching for something more back in the early 90s. And from that little grassroots spark, it just absolutely exploded. That number grew to over 5 million copies sold in 34 languages, really cementing its place as a true cultural phenomenon. But, a book that gets this popular is never going to be universally loved. It kicked off this huge debate, and people had some very, very strong feelings about it, on both sides. For millions of people, especially in the 90s when New Age ideas were really taking off, this book was life-changing. It gave them a whole new language to talk about intuition and purpose. For them, the impact was absolutely profound. On the other hand, the literary world, they were less than impressed. Critics and a lot of readers just found the writing to be really simplistic, the dialogue was clunky, and the plot felt like it was just a flimsy excuse to deliver the spiritual lessons. And that right there is the heart of the whole debate. Was it a parable where the message was the only thing that mattered, not the writing? Or was it, like one critic called it, New Age oversimplified jumbo-jumbo? Honestly, the answer really depends on what you were looking for when you picked it up. But here's where things get really weird. While readers were arguing about the book, a totally different field, cognitive science, was exploring concepts that sounded strangely familiar. This brings us to a seriously mind-bending question. What if our brains don't always follow the logical, classical rules we assume they do? Back in 2007, a research paper looked at exactly this, exploring what it called quantum-like behavior in how we think. The paper even brought up the famous psychologist Carl Jung, who actually coined the term synchronicity, and the physicist Wolfgang Pauli. Pauli was fascinated by this idea that there could be a deep connection between our minds and the physical world. To make their point, the researchers used ambiguous images, like this classic face or vase illusion, to see how context changes what we perceive. What they found was that the very act of observing could change the outcome. They called this context dependency, which is this fascinating scientific parallel to the prophecy's idea that our awareness can actually influence the reality we experience. Pretty cool, right? So, decades after it was first sold out of the back of a car, what is the lasting impact of the Celestine prophecy? What's the big takeaway? Well, whether you love it or hate it, you just can't deny its influence. It was on the bestseller list for over 3 years. It introduced concepts like synchronicity and energy dynamics to a huge mainstream audience, and it really acted as a gateway for countless people to start exploring spirituality. And of course, it led to sequels and a movie. In the end, maybe the book's greatest legacy isn't about whether its story is good or its spirituality is true. It might just be the simple, powerful question it leaves us with. A question that circles all the way back to that very first insight, just urging us to look a little closer at the mysterious, meaningful patterns in our own lives.